Red Hollow was the kind of town that trusted a steady hand more than a kind heart. Dust rolled along the main street like a restless spirit, catching on wagon wheels and boot heels. The sun beat down without mercy, bleaching storefront signs and tempers alike. And at the far end of town stood a narrow shop with a wooden placard, swinging gently in the dry wind. "See, Hail Gunsmith." Inside, Clara worked in silence. The sharp scent of oil and iron filled the air as she adjusted the cylinder of a revolver beneath the glow of a lantern. Her hands moved with precisions, steady, confident, practiced. She had learned young, standing beside her father at this very workbench, watching him carve metal like it was art instead of weaponry. Now, she stood alone, the Red Hollow. She was Caleb Hale, nephew to the late Thomas Hale, a quiet young man who kept to himself and knew more about steel than conversation. No one questioned it. They saw what they expected to see: cropped hair tucked under a hat, loose shirt hiding curves, a voice kept low and clipped. In the West, people believed what was convenient. A shadow fell across the doorway. The bell above the door chimed. Clara didn't look up immediately. Shops open. Bootsteps entered measured, unhurried, not the heavy stomp of a rancher or the swagger of a gambler. "Good afternoon," came a calm, warm voice. Clara finally lifted her eyes. The man standing before her wore black butt, not the dusty black of a gunslinger. His coat was simple, neat, his expression steady, his eyes gentle. "I'm looking for Mr. Hale," he said. "You found him." She kept her tone flat. He removed his hat, respectfully. "Gabriel Turner. I arrived yesterday. I'll be serving as preacher here." Clara stiffened slightly. A preacher. His gaze drifted around the shop, lingering on polished rifles lining the wall. There was no fear in his face, only quiet disapproval. "I was hoping," Gabriel continued, carefully, "that you might consider helping with repairs on the church. The roof's been leaking since spring. I heard you work with metal." Clara leaned back against the bench. "I work with firearms." "Yes," he said softly. "I can see that." Silence stretched between them, thick but not hostile. "You don't approve," she observed. "I believe weapons are often a sign that something else has failed," Gabriel replied. Her jaw tightened. "Out here a sign you plan to live another day." His eyes returned to hers, studying her, not accusing, just searching. "You speak like someone who's had to defend more than property." For a moment, she nearly forgot to breathe. No one in town looked at her that closely. No one listened for what lay beneath the words. She turned away first. "I'll see what scrap I can spare," she said curtly. A small smile touched his lips. "Thank you, Mr. Hale." He paused at the door. "You're welcome at the church any time." The bell chimed again as he stepped back into the blinding sunlight. Clara stood motionless long after he left. Gabriel Turner despised weapons. She could see it in the way his shoulders tensed among them. Yet he had not spoken with hatred, only conviction. She glanced at her reflection in the gleam of a rifle barrel. Beneath the hat and dust was Clara Haledaughter, apprentice, survivor. If he ever learned the truth that the town's gunsmith was a woman hiding behind a borrowed name, what would that gentle look in his eyes turn into? Disappointment, disgust, or something worse? Pity. Clara set the revolver down and walked to the back shelf, pulling aside a stack of unused sheet metal. "For the roof," she muttered to herself. It wasn't for peace. It wasn't for the church. It certainly wasn't for the preacher with steady eyes and dangerous kindness. But as the sun dipped lower over Red Hollow, Clara knew one thing with unsettling certainty. For the first time since taking her father's place, she was afraid. Not of outlaws, not of bullets, but of being seen. Clara had repaired rifles for ranchers who feared cattle thieves. She had cleaned blood from barrels brought in after drunken duels. She had even fashioned custom grips for men who believed a weapon made them important. But she had never repaired a church roof. The morning sun rose pale over Red Hollow as Clara loaded sheets of scrap metal onto a borrowed wagon. She wore her usual disguise, hat pulled low, shirt collar high, sleeves rolled just enough to show capable forearms. but nothing more. The town still believed she was Caleb Hale, and she needed it that way. When she reached the church, at the edge of town, Gabriel was already there, balancing carefully along the slanted roof. His coat was gone, sleeves rolled up, revealing lean arms, not softened by comfort, but strengthened by quiet labor. He climbed down when he saw her. "You came," he said, his smile bright enough to rival the sun. "I said I would," she replied. Together, they lifted the metal sheets. Their hands brushed once just briefly, but Clara felt it like a spark, catching dry grass. She quickly pulled away, annoyed at herself for noticing. They worked in companionable silence for a time. The rhythmic hammering echoed across the open plains. Gabriel handled tools awkwardly at first, but he adjusted quickly, listening when Clara corrected his grip. "You've done this before," he observed. "Fixed more than guns," she answered, surprising herself with the admission. He glanced at her. "You don't talk much about yourself." "There's not much to say." "I find that hard to believe." Clara climbed down from the roof and wiped sweat from her brow. The church looked sturdier now, protected. The word lingered in her thoughts. "You don't like what I do," she said suddenly. Gabriel rested the hammer against his shoulder. "I don't like what weapons are used for." "That's not the same thing." "No," he agreed gently. "It isn't." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've seen towns destroyed because fear ruled them. Men believing the quickest way to solve a problem is with a trigger. I don't want Red Hollow to become that." "It already is," Clara replied. "You just arrived." "And yet," he said, "I believe people can choose differently." She studied him. There was no naivety in his eyes, only stubborn hope. "Hope won't stop a bullet," she said. "No," Gabriel admitted, "but it might stop the hand that fires it." The wind swept across the plains, stirring dust around their boots. Clara felt something unsettling shift inside her. She had always believed survival depended on preparation, on being stronger, faster, better armed. Gabriel believed survival depended on restraint. They were opposites. And yet, standing beside him, she didn't feel judged. She felt challenged. When the roof was finished, Gabriel invited her inside. The church was simple wooden pews, modest pulpit, sunlight spilling through narrow windows. It smelled of pine and dust, instead of oil and gunpowder. "Peace feels different here," he said quietly. Clara removed her hat again. Without it, she felt exposed even, though her secret remained hidden. "Doesn't last," she murmured. "Peace never does." "If it can," Gabriel said, turning toward her. "If someone is brave enough to protect it without destroying it." She let out a dry laugh. "That's a fine line." "Yes," he said. "It is." For a moment, their eyes locked. The air felt heavier than before. Clara's heartbeat quickened not from danger, but from something far more confusing. "Why stay in a place like this?" she asked. "You could preach in a city, somewhere safer." Gabriel's answer came without hesitation. "Because places like this need reminding that they are more than their violence." His gaze softened. "And because I believe even the hardest towns hold good people." Clara swallowed. If he knew the truth, if he knew the gunsmith he spoke to was Clara Hale, not Caleb Wood, he still believed that. A shout echoed faintly from the direction of the saloon. Raised voices, tension. Gabriel's expression shifted instantly to concern. "Trouble?" he asked. "There's always trouble," Clara replied automatically, but as she placed her hat back on her head, she felt something new stir within her. For years, she had believed strength came from steel and precision. Now, watching Gabriel step toward, the sound of conflict without a weapon in his hand, she wondered if there was another kind of strength altogether, and whether she was brave enough to understand it. The shouting near the saloon did not fade. It grew. Clara and Gabriel walked side by side down the dusty street, though their strides carried different meanings. Gabriel's pace was calm but purposeful, like a man stepping toward responsibility. Clara's was alert, shoulders squared, eyes scanning windows and rooftops. Red Hollow had fallen into that dangerous kind of silence, the kind that gathers before a storm. Then they saw them. 5 riders. Hard faces, weather-beaten coats, rifles strapped openly across their backs. At their center sat a broad-shouldered man with a scar carving its way from his temple to his jaw. Clara's stomach tightened. Cutter Briggs. He had once ridden through town years ago, buying custom ammunition from her father. He had laughed loudly, paid in cash, and left behind rumors of burned ranches. Now, he was back. "Well, I'll be damned," Cutter called as he swung down from his horse. Red Hollow still standing. The townsfolk hovered near doorways, uncertain. The sheriff was nowhere in sight. Gabriel stepped forward before Clara could stop him. "You're welcome to water your horses," Gabriel said evenly. "But this town has little to spare." Cutter's grin was slow and mocking. "And who might you be?" "Gabriel Turner. I serve the church." "Preacher, huh?" Cutter chuckled. "You preach against men like me." "I preach for men to choose better," Gabriel replied. Clara felt heat rise under her collar. Gabriel had courage, but this was not a sermon hall. Cutter's eyes drifted past Gabriel and landed on Clara. "And Hale," he said. "Heard you're the one shaping steel around here." Clara kept her voice low. "What do you want?" "Ammunition, repairs, maybe a rifle or two." Cutter's tone hardened. "And I want it quick." The request was not a request. Gabriel turned slightly toward Clara. "You don't have to give them anything." Cutter laughed sharply. "That's so, preacher thinks faith's gonna stop me." Clara stepped forward, placing herself subtly between the outlaw and Gabriel. "If I refuse," she said evenly, "you'll take it anyway, and likely burn something on your way out." "Smart man," Cutter smirked. The weight of the moment pressed down on her chest. If she supplied them fully, blood would follow. If she refused outright, Red Hollow would pay immediately. She made a calculation, the way she always did, precise and controlled. "I'll give you limited ammunition," she said. "Enough to ride safe through open country. Nothing more." Cutter's eyes narrowed. "You bargain with me." "I protect my business," she replied. "And this town." A long, tense beat passed. Finally, Cutter shrugged. "Fine, but don't test me, Hale." As Clara walked toward her shop, with the outlaws trailing behind, she felt Gabriel's gaze burning into her back. Inside, she handed over older cartridges, less reliable, less accurate. She adjusted a rifle sight slightly off-center before returning it. Small acts of sabotage. Small acts of resistance. When Cutter and his men finally rode out, dust swirling behind them, Red Hollow exhaled. Gabriel entered the shop slowly. "You armed them," he said quietly. "I restrained them," Clara shot back. "You gave them tools to harm others. I gave them just enough not to harm us." Gabriel's expression was pained, not angry. "There has to be another way." Clara slammed a drawer shut. "You think I enjoy this? You think I don't know what those bullets might do? Then why continue?" he pressed. "Because the world isn't shaped by wishes," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "It's shaped by what people are willing to defend." Silence filled the shop. The scent of oil and smoke lingered thick between them. Gabriel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I don't believe you're a cruel man, Mr. Hale." The words hit her harder than any accusation. Man, if he knew the person he was defending was a woman hiding in borrowed skin, would that belief shatter? "I believe," Gabriel continued gently, "that you carry more burden than you show." Clara couldn't meet his eyes, because he was right, and because, for the first time, she wished she could set that burden down, tell him the truth, let him see her fully. But secrets had kept her alive, and in the West, survival often mattered more than honesty. Still, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in streaks of red, Clara felt something changing inside her. Cutter Briggs would not be satisfied with limited, and when he returned, as men like him always did, she would have to choose, not just between violence and restraint, but between the name she borrowed and the woman she truly was. The wind shifted after sunset. Clara felt it first not in the air, but in her bones. Trouble had a rhythm in the West. It rarely struck once and disappeared. It circled. It tested fences. It came back when the moon was high and decent folk were asleep. She had just finished closing the shop when she heard the church bell clang. Not in celebration, but in chaos. Once, twice, then a gunshot split the night. Clara didn't think. She moved. By the time she reached the churchyard, lantern light flickered wildly inside. The front door hung open. A horse stood tied badly to the post. Cutter. She stepped quietly along the sidewall, revolver drawn. Through the open window, she saw him, rifle raised, boot pressed against a pew, grin sharp as broken glass. Gabriel stood before him, unarmed. "You preach about peace," Cutter sneered. "Let's see it save you." Gabriel's voice was steady, though Clara could see the tension in his shoulders. "You don't want to do this." "No." Cutter cocked the rifle. "Seems simple enough to me." Clara pushed the door open. "Drop it." Her voice was firm, commanding. Cutter turned, startled. His gaze narrowed. "Hale, thought you'd be smarter than this." "I am," she replied. "That's why I'm here." Gabriel looked at her, relief flickering across his face, then confusion as he noticed something different. She hadn't lowered her voice. Cutter laughed harshly. "Preacher's right. Town's full of fools." He raised the rifle toward Gabriel again. Clara acted, her shot cracked through the church, precise and controlled. The bullet struck the rifle barrel, knocking it from Cutter's hands. Wood splintered. Metal clanged across the floor. Before he could reach for his sidearm, Clara stepped forward, revolver steady. "Leave," she ordered. Cutter stared at her, breathing hard. Then his eyes shifted upward, really looking at her for the first time. "You ain't no man," he said slowly. The words hung heavy in the air. Clara felt the weight of years pressing down on her shoulders. The borrowed name, the flattened voice, the constant vigilance. She removed her hat. Her hair tumbled free, catching the lantern light like a flame unbound. "My name is Clara Hale," she said clearly, "and you will not touch this town again." Cutter's shock lasted only a second before anger replaced it. He lunged for the fallen rifle. Clara fired again this time, grazing his shoulder. Not fatal, just enough. He stumbled back with a curse, clutching the wound. "This ain't over," he growled, retreating toward the door. "It is tonight," she replied. He fled into the darkness, horse hooves pounding into the distance. Silence filled the church. The echo of gunfire faded slowly, leaving only Clara's breathing and the faint creak of wood settling. Gabriel stared at her, not at the gun, at her. "You," his voice faltered. "You're a woman," she finished quietly. The word felt like both freedom and risk. "I never meant to deceive you," she said, "but no one in Red Hollow would have trusted me otherwise. I learned the trade from my father. I kept it alive, the only way I could." Gabriel stepped closer, eyes searching hers. "You stood between me and a rifle," he said. "Yes." "You disarmed him without killing him." "Yes." "You protected this church." Clara swallowed. "I protect what matters." He looked down at the revolver in her hand. "I despise what guns can do," Gabriel said softly. "But tonight, yours saved a life." She felt tears threaten, but held them back. "Does that change what you think of me?" A long pause stretched between them. "No," he said finally. Her heart tightened. "It deepens it." She blinked. "Deepens it." "I thought you were a man burdened by hard choices," Gabriel continued. "Now I see you're a woman who carried those burdens alone." Clara's grip on the revolver loosened. "You're not angry?" she asked. "I don't like the lie," he admitted, "but I understand the fear behind it." The lantern light softened his features. There was no disgust in his eyes, no pity, only respect. "I believe in peace," Gabriel said, "but I also believe in courage. And what you did tonight required both." Clara felt something inside her, steady like a compass, finally finding north. For the first time since taking her father's place, she wasn't hiding, and she wasn't alone. Outside, the wind carried Cutter's fading trail into the darkness. But inside the small wooden church, something far stronger had taken root. Truth, and the fragile beginning of something neither steel nor sermons could fully explain. Morning in Red Hollow arrived differently after gunfire. The town gathered in low murmurs outside the church, boots scuffing dust, voices uncertain. Word had spread faster than sunrise. Cutter Briggs had returned. There had been shots, and the gunsmith was not who everyone thought. Clara stood at the edge of the church steps, hat absent, hair loose over her shoulders. For the first time, she did not disguise herself. The sign outside her shop still read, "See Hale Gunsmith." But now the name meant something different. It meant her. Whispers drifted through the crowd. "She's the one who shot him. She's Thomas Hale's daughter, a woman gunsmith." Gabriel stepped beside her, hands folded calmly in front of him. His presence did not silence the town, but it steadied it. "She saved the church," he said clearly. "She saved me." The murmurs softened. Sheriff Dalton, who had finally shown himself after the danger passed, cleared his throat. "Briggs won't be riding back soon. Not with that shoulder." A few uneasy chuckles followed. Clara lifted her chin. "I never meant to deceive anyone," she said, her voice strong but not harsh. "After my father died, I kept the shop running, the only way I knew how. If I'd told the truth from the start, none of you would have trusted me with your rifles." No one argued, because she was right. Old rancher Whitaker stepped forward slowly. "You fixed my Winchester last winter," he muttered. "Best work it ever had." Another voice chimed in. "My revolver too." The tension began to shift, not into applause, not into celebration, but into reluctant acceptance. The West did not change, East, but it respected skill, and it respected bravery. Later that afternoon, Clara returned to her shop. The familiar scent of oil and iron greeted her like an old friend. Yet something felt lighter. The doorbell chimed. Gabriel entered. He paused, just inside, taking in the rifles along the wall. The tools laid neatly across the bench. "You're staying," he said. "Yes," she replied. "This is still my trade." He walked closer, running his fingers lightly along the workbench. "I've been thinking, that's dangerous for a preacher." He smiled faintly. "Perhaps." He grew serious again. "Peace doesn't mean pretending danger doesn't exist. It means choosing how we respond to it." Clara leaned against the table. "And what do you choose?" "I choose to stand beside someone who protects without cruelty," he said. Her breath caught slightly. "I still don't love weapons," Gabriel admitted. "But I saw what you did last night. You could have killed him." "I didn't want to," she said quietly. "I build firearms. I don't worship them." He nodded. "Then maybe we aren't standing on opposite sides, after all." Outside, the church bell rang clear, steady, repaired roof shining under the sun. Clara stepped toward the doorway, watching children run past in the street. Life continued. Dust still swirled. The West was still wild, but it felt balanced. Gabriel joined her outside. "You once told me, hope won't stop a bullet," he said. "It won't." "No," he agreed. "But perhaps hope and courage together can stop what leads to one." She considered that. For years, she had believed strength came only from precision and steel. Gabriel had shown her another kind one, rooted in restraint, in faith, in believing people could be better. "Maybe peace needs protection," she said slowly. "And maybe protection needs a conscience," he replied. Their hands brushed. This time, neither of them pulled away. The townsfolk no longer stared. They simply watched, curious, cautious, but no longer doubtful. Red Hollow would always have its dangers. Riders like Cutter would always exist somewhere beyond the horizon. But now, the town had both a preacher who believed in peace and a gunsmith who understood the cost of it. Clara turned the shop sign slightly, so it faced the street more clearly. "See, Hale Gunsmith," not a borrowed name anymore. Her name. Gabriel looked at her with quiet admiration. "You're not just shaping steel," he said. "You're shaping this town." She smiled softly. "Then, I suppose we both are." As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Clara felt something she had not allowed herself in years. Belonging, not hidden, not disguised, seen and loved. In the Wild West, that might have been the rarest thing of all. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories.